guys, welcome to my channel or welcome back to my channel. My name is Katie and I'm a wedding photographer here in North Carolina. I'm wearing my favorite sweater today, so it's gonna be a good day. Today I wanted to share some tips if you're photographing your first wedding. There are some things that I wish I would have known before I photographed my first wedding, and then things that I got help with that I found very helpful day of. So I'm just gonna give you a couple quick tips on how to make your first wedding a little bit less stressful. So the first thing I have is to be super comfortable with your camera and your manual settings. Wedding days go by so quickly that you need to make sure that you're comfortable shooting in manual mode, going through your settings, changing them quickly. It's not a good time to learn your camera if you're not super comfortable with it already. Lighting situations on wedding day change from natural light, like during the day, like right now, to receptions being dark, no light, or artificial lights. Lighting situations change all the time on wedding day. So you need to make sure that you're comfortable, not a pro by any means, but comfortable. You understand light, you understand how your camera works, you know what ISO, you know what like f-stop you should be shooting at. Those basic levels of shooting in manual, you need to make sure that you're comfortable with it. So I do have a video of how to start shooting in manual mode that I'll make sure to link down below. But if you're not super comfortable with it yet, try to get a second photography gig, practice on friends or family, like really get comfortable with your camera before becoming the lead photographer at a wedding, because with weddings you can't really do that over, hopefully. So I would just say, if you already have a wedding booked, practice like crazy before the wedding day and get really comfortable with your camera. Here's a very important tip. Get a detailed list of all family members. Like if you hear nothing else in this video, get a detailed list of all their family members. So for me, family formals are probably the most stressful part of a wedding day, because after the ceremony, like they just wander. They go into cocktail hour, they start mingling, and sometimes it's like herding cats to get them back to do family formals. And I can't imagine if you didn't know beforehand everyone that needed to be in the photo, just how stressful that could be. So that's why it's so important to communicate with your couple beforehand and get a detailed list of all of their family members. So this list, I don't just ask, oh, can I have a list of family members? This is their name and relation to the couple, and everyone that they want included in their family formals. Like everyone that you want a picture of, like list them to me, like give me their names. So instead of saying, you know, in my list, mother of the bride, mother of the groom, I say Linda, mother of groom, I don't know, Sally, mother of bride. Like I put their names in their relations, and I'll tell you why. Because on the day of the wedding, I can yell, sister of the groom. They're not used to being called sister of the groom. So like for me, if my brother got married and the photographer was yelling sister of the groom, I mean, yeah, that's me, but like I wouldn't respond if I'm having a conversation with someone. But if they yelled Katie, sister of the groom, you hear your name and you're like, oh, that's my name. Like you kind of perk up and then you can listen more. So it's a lot easier for me to say, Linda, mother of the groom, let's get in here. Linda's gonna look, okay? Linda's gonna look up. It's a lot easier to get their attention. It's a lot easier to just communicate in general if you have their name and their relation. So in addition to the detailed list of names, I also put in the various combinations and get approval from my bride and groom, from my couple. So what I mean by that is I will literally list out, I put it like with their timeline. I will say bride with Linda, in parentheses, mom, bride with Bob, in parentheses, dad, bride and groom with Linda and Bob. Like all the different combinations, groom with mom, groom with dad, groom with sister, bride and groom with mom, bride and groom with dad, bride and groom with sister. Like, I always put those variations and I send it back to my client so we know exactly how many photos we're gonna take. We know all the combinations, because there's always a family member who's like, oh, well, this person should be in the photo. Well, this person shouldn't be in the photo. I was at a wedding once. I was photographing a wedding once, and the grandma did not want someone in the photo. Like, she was kind of throwing a fit. It was really awkward for me. But if my couple and I are on the same page, we have the same vision, we know all the combinations, they can trust me and they can say, listen to the photographer. Everybody that's supposed to be in the photo is gonna be in the photo. And I also tell my couple to communicate that to their family beforehand. After the ceremony, we're taking family photos. You need to stay. Like, communicate that, because they will wonder. Family members will wander off and start mingling and start having the party, you know, that part of the wedding, which I don't blame them. But I always ask my couple to communicate to their family, everyone that's on my list, everyone that we discussed, to stay after the ceremony for family photos. And I do those right after the ceremony, so then I can be like, goodbye, you can now mingle. Another super important tip is to create a photography timeline and send it to your couple beforehand. Timelines can be kind of intimidating. Luckily, when I started creating timelines, I had someone help me, a photographer friend help me, but I did create a whole video of how I create my wedding timelines now. Again, I'll link that down below, so make sure to check it out if you're kind of wondering how to make a timeline, how much time should I allot for couples portraits or family photos. I go over and all of that in my other video, so make sure you check that out. But it's important for everybody to have the timeline, like, to your couple, because, and I like to make it because I know how much time it takes for me to tell this story. I'm a storyteller, and that's kind of my vision for how I photograph weddings. I want detailed shots. I want getting ready, I want ceremony, like, I want it all to be a nice story, and I know how much time it will take me to take all of these photos. I know the max amount of time I can take these photos where I'm like kind of rushing, but like okay, and then times where I'm like more relaxed. So I think timelines are really important for you as a photographer to know how long it takes you to like take these photos, and it keeps everybody on track. It's like, oh, what do we do now? The family doesn't know that we're doing family photos right after ceremony because I didn't tell them. Well, now we have to go find family. Oh, well, bridal party didn't know they were after family, so now I have to go find bridal party. Like, everyone knows the timeline and can stick to it. Another thing is you can make sure you schedule time to take certain shots. So I think it's really easy for details of a wedding day to kind of get neglected. So for me and my timeline, I allot at least 30 minutes as soon as I arrive to do details. So usually when I arrive at a wedding, I'll go check in with the bride and be like, hey, what's up? You look amazing. And then I tell her, like, I'm here to do details. Let me get your dress. Let me get your rings. And then I just kind of leave her alone and I go do detail shots. I do detail shots of the venue if possible. Sometimes they have things set up, like finished setup, sometimes they don't, it depends, but I'll at least get those rings, the invitations, the dress, the shoes, any of those cute little details. I say cute, I don't know why I said cute. Any detail at the beginning, because if I don't schedule it at the beginning and I just jump right in, I know they're gonna be neglected. Those shots won't happen, because all of a sudden, oh, the bride's in her dress and I didn't take like the hanging dress shot. You know, so you kind of stay more organized as well. It gives you enough time. You can schedule things based on lighting. You just get a bit more control. And now some weddings, I will say, work with coordinators or like day of coordinators or planners. I would communicate with them as well. I've shared timelines and we've kind of gone back and forth, and I just asked to rearrange some things so it's better for photos, and they're all for it. I mean, knock on wood, I haven't worked with a bad coordinator yet that is like very adamant about certain things being on time, but I would just kind of coordinate things with a bride and groom or coordinate things with a coordinator and send them your photography timeline. It's just really important, and I think it keeps the couple calm as well, because I said my timeline and it's one less thing that they have to worry about, and things can kind of be based off of it. So timeline, super important. So this is a tip that I did, is to look at the venue beforehand. When I was doing my first wedding, I was kind of a nervous wreck. I put a lot of pressure on myself. So, and I actually knew the venue that they were getting married. My friend got married there. Sorry if you can hear Denali chewing her bones super loud next to us. It's fine. My friend actually got married at this venue, so I knew it. But I did also know that it was extremely dark. It was such a dark venue. Beautiful, but very dark. So I looked at pictures online, and I think that's great to kind of get, good spots to take photos. If you look at pictures online, look at the venue's Instagram. That's a great place. Then you kind of get an idea of like, ooh, that looks cool, I might go there. This is what the venue has, especially if you've never been there before. So you can also start to see the lighting situation. So I had been to the first venue before, but also looking online at photos, it's very dark. You can see it's very dark. So then you're like, okay, it's very dark. I need to make sure I'm comfortable with flash, or I need to maybe practice shooting in darker situations. Or if they're getting married in like a barn and it's very orange, you need to prepare yourself for that, or you can prepare yourself with that by looking at photos beforehand. So that's just something that I like to do. Honestly, with any venue I shoot, even though it's not my first wedding anymore, I still look at all the venues, because you want to know kind of what you're walking into. You don't want to be surprised. And I will also say that don't be afraid to show up early on wedding day. My first wedding, I was absurdly early. I got there super early my first wedding, just to walk around and figure out where the heck I'm gonna take these photos, because it was actually a really cold, rainy day, so we couldn't go outside or anything. So I needed to figure out where I was taking my photos. Okay, so I just walked around the whole time, like for a few minutes, and it kind of gets the pressure off of you too. And then I went and checked in with the bride. So don't be afraid to show up early, especially if you've never been to this venue before and you're kind of like freaking out a little bit. Wow, Denali, thanks for dropping your bone. Don't be afraid to get there early and just walk around and figure out the lay of the land, the lighting situation, get inspiration of where you're gonna start taking photos. Don't be afraid to get there early. Make the bride and groom feel as comfortable as possible. As I said, my first wedding was a very rainy day, very cold and rainy day in February, and we couldn't go outside for pretty much any of their photos, but I prefer natural light. I just realized natural light, isn't that natty light? I really wanted to go outside and get some natural light, but it was very cold and very rainy. So I just asked them if they would be willing to like hop outside. I have a clear umbrella. Do you want to just hop outside, take some photos? They said, sure. So we went outside, there was a little covered area. We took some photos there. We went out and had like the umbrella. One of my favorite shots when it's raining is the clear umbrella and they're kissing and it's black and white. I'll insert it here. It's one of my favorite photos. But they stood under there for like a little bit. I think they were out there, we were probably out there for 5 to 10 minutes max. I mean, probably 5 minutes. And I could just tell that that bride was freezing. It was cold. I was freezing. So the bride was shivering and they were like, can we go back inside? They're clearly like uncomfortable at that point, right? And so I was like, absolutely. Even though I would prefer them to suck it up and stay outside and these are the best photos, you have to make sure that they're comfortable. And obviously they're not comfortable. And they're gonna look back at these photos and be like, wow, we were freezing the entire time. Like, the mood, like, of your pictures. Like, you know how you were feeling when you took them. So you have to put their comfort sometimes over the photos and not do like weird poses that they're not comfortable with. Applying this to poses, keeping your couple comfortable. Some people are self-conscious about things. They don't want you to photograph something a certain way. Don't photograph it that way. Like, I think there's a lot of posing courses out there. I know Caitlin James has a posing course. Look into like some, go-to poses on wedding days. But if you want to get like a little bit out there, make sure that your couple's comfortable with it or wants to do it. What I said before, people will look back And if they think they look weird, they're not gonna love their photos, and that's just really sad because you made them pose in a way that they thought was weird, but you thought was cool. Like, but they weren't comfortable with it. It's gonna look weird. This is kind of inspired by a TikTok that I saw of this poor girl who hates her wedding photos, and she put them on TikTok and said, like, she didn't know why the photographer made them stand like that or pose like that. She said it was really weird. This photographer, like, during the reception, she thought it would be funny to take pictures of the bride and the bridesmaids helping the bride go to the bathroom. Like, just really weird, uncomfortable things. She's looking back on her photos and she doesn't like them. So I would just say, you know, you have some go-to poses, and if you want to try something, kind of check in to make sure that they're okay with it. So an example is I like to do lifts where the guy lifts the girl. But what I frame it as is like, okay, we're gonna get crazy. How do you feel about picking her up? And if he says, absolutely not, I'll be like, okay, let's try something else. And then we move on. But I always check in like, how do you feel about this? Are you cool with this? And I just constantly check in on them. I don't just say like, okay, now hold hands, are you okay with that? Like, I don't do stuff like that. But like, if we're getting into like, okay, you're gonna need to trust me. How do you feel about doing this? And sometimes people are like, this feels weird. I'm like, let me show you. And I turn my camera around and I'm like, how does that look to you? And most of the time, like especially the dancing ones, like twirling, I have her just kind of step forward and backwards and fake twirl for a little bit, and she's like, I feel really weird. I'm like, but look here. And I show her the photos, and usually they love it. I always check in on my couples to make sure they're okay with any of the posing, make sure they're comfortable. You know, we do photos right after the ceremony. Do you guys need a drink? Do you guys need food? I'm fine with them taking a little bit of a break and not just getting into it, right? Like, make sure your couple's really comfortable. The day is about them after all. My final tip is to find out what the send-off is before you get there. In my wedding questionnaires, I always ask, are you doing any sort of special exit? Sometimes people say no, and so it's 8 o'clock and I leave. That's fine. But a lot of people do sparklers or streamers, or I needed to know what they were doing beforehand so I could prepare. This wedding specifically, they were going to do sparklers. Like most weddings, my wedding included. I was so intimidated by sparklers. I'd never done anything like that before. I've never like photographed a sparkler exit before this day. So what I did is, once I found out that the sparkler exit was happening, I started watching videos about how to photograph sparkler exits, how to be better photographing sparkler exits. I've mentioned Joy Michelle's video before of how, like, different ways you can photograph a sparkler exit. Great video. I'll link it down below. I just started watching YouTube, reading things, practicing lower light. I mean, I didn't practice with sparklers, but I started educating myself on that specific exit. And so whenever it happened, I was a lot more comfortable. And it actually didn't happen because it was raining. They couldn't do sparklers. But I had watched a video where this guy said, you know, if the sparklers don't work, have everyone bring out their camera phones. What is this, the 2000s? Everyone bring out like their phones and have their flashlights on. So then I suggested that to the bride. We did like a spirit tunnel situation, and it turned out really, really great. So I was able to prepare by watching videos because I knew what the exit was. So if you were like me and the thought of like a sparkler exit kind of intimidates you, maybe it scares you a little bit, I highly recommend that you figure that out before in a wedding questionnaire, or just ask your couple, and then you can practice or just get more educated on different techniques and stuff, and you'll just feel a lot better. You'll feel a lot more comfortable, trust me. And that is all the tips I have for you today. I wish you nothing but the best if you're photographing your first wedding, or if you're just getting into weddings and this is something that you're wanting to do. I have a lot of wedding photography tips on my channel if you want to check them out, but I hope you found these tips in this video helpful. If you did, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye!